Imagine waking up, and for a few precious seconds, you have no idea where you are. The air smells like rain on warm earth. Sunlight filters through leaves you can almost feel. You hear birds, distant traffic, a dog barking. Everything feels real. But then you remember, you chose this. You chose to wake up here, in a world that doesn't actually exist.
Look at a map of global internet usage. The brightest spots aren't cities at night. They're the places where billions of us already spend hours of every day inside digital spaces. Social feeds, games, virtual offices. We are already migrating, one click at a time.
So here's the question that this video is really about. What happens when the line between real and virtual becomes a choice? Not a glitch, not a sci-fi fantasy. A choice you can make every morning when you open your eyes. Could we live entirely inside virtual worlds? And if we could, would we want to? And this is where we have to look at the actual trajectory of the technology. Because the idea of living inside a virtual world isn't just a daydream anymore. It's a roadmap that engineers and companies are actively building, piece by piece. Consider the milestones we have already passed. In 2012, a young entrepreneur named Palmer Luckey launched a Kickstarter campaign for a device called the Oculus Rift. It was clunky. The resolution was low, the tracking made some people nauseous, but it was the first time a consumer-grade headset made you feel like you were somewhere else. That moment changed everything. Facebook bought Oculus for $2 billion in 2014, and the race was on. Now fast forward to 2024. Neuralink, Elon Musk's brain-computer interface company, began human trials. The goal is to create a direct communication channel between your brain and a computer. No keyboard, no mouse, no controller. Just thought. Imagine that. Early results showed a patient controlling a cursor just by imagining the movement. It sounds small, but it is a seismic shift. Because once you can read neural signals with precision, you can also write them back. That is the key to full dive immersion. Here's what that means in practical terms. Right now, your senses are separate from the machine. You see a screen, you hear speakers, you feel vibrations from a haptic vest, but those are all approximations. A neural interface can bypass the body entirely. It sends the experience directly to the parts of your brain that process sight, sound, touch, even smell and taste. The technology is still in its infancy, but the path is clear. We are moving from wearing reality to experiencing it from the inside. And the major players are investing heavily. Meta has poured tens of billions into its Reality Labs division. Their stated goal is to create photorealistic virtual worlds by the end of this decade. Sony is pushing the PlayStation VR ecosystem with increasingly sophisticated headsets. Apple entered the space with the Vision Pro, a device that blends digital objects with the real world in ways that feel almost magical. But here's the thing. All of these are still just glasses. They are windows into a digital space. The next step is to break the window and step through. That brings us to the concept of the singularity. Ray Kurzweil, the futurist and Google engineer, has been predicting for decades that by around 2045, we will reach a point where artificial intelligence surpasses human intelligence and merges with us. His timeline is controversial, but the underlying idea is not. We are accelerating toward a moment where the boundary between human and machine becomes porous. And if that happens, living inside a virtual world is no longer a question of technology. It becomes a question of identity. Every year, the graphics in video games get closer to photorealism. Every year, haptic feedback gets more nuanced. Every year, brain-computer interfaces get more precise. These are not separate trends. They are converging. The same way that smartphones combined a phone, a camera, a GPS, and an internet browser into one device, these technologies are combining into a single platform. A platform that can simulate any environment with perfect fidelity. So let me break this down with a timeline. By 2030, we will likely have wireless headsets that are indistinguishable from wearing a pair of sunglasses. They will project full-color, high-resolution imagery directly onto your retina. Haptic gloves will let you feel textures. Spatial audio will place sounds exactly where they would be in the real world. It will be convincing enough that your brain will struggle to tell the difference. By 2040, we may have non-invasive neural interfaces that can read and write simple sensory data. You will be able to taste virtual food, smell virtual flowers, feel the warmth of a virtual sun on your skin. And by 2050, if the trend holds, full dive immersion becomes a consumer product. You put on a device, lie down, and your consciousness transfers into a digital body in a digital world. You can stay there for hours, days, weeks, potentially forever. Now here's the uncomfortable part. The technology is not the bottleneck. We have the physics, we have the neuroscience, we have the computing power. The real question is whether we are ready for what comes next. Because once full dive VR is possible, the reasons to leave it become fewer and fewer. And that is a threshold humanity has never crossed before. So let me take you into the psychology of all this. Because the technology is one thing, but what happens to us, our minds, our relationships, our sense of self, when reality becomes optional? That is the deeper question, and it is where things get unsettling. Stanford's Virtual Human Interaction Lab has been studying this for years. Their research on something called presence is fascinating. When you are inside a virtual environment that feels real enough, your brain treats it as real. Memories formed in VR can be indistinguishable from memories formed in the physical world. Participants in one study recalled events that happened to their avatars with the same emotional weight as events that happened to their actual bodies. Imagine that. Your brain does not care if the experience is simulated. It only cares that the experience happened. And this is where it gets interesting, because if your brain can form real memories in a virtual world, then your identity can start to shift. Who are you, really? Are you the person who lives in a small apartment in a crowded city? Or are you the person who spends 8 hours a day as a dragon rider in a fantasy realm? The answer is both. But over time, the virtual self can become more compelling, more vivid, more meaningful. Second Life is a perfect case study. That platform launched in 2003, and it is still running today. People have built entire lives there. They have gotten married. They have raised virtual children. They have started businesses that earned real money. And here is the thing. Many of those residents reported that their virtual relationships felt deeper and more authentic than their real-world ones. Not because they were escaping from reality, but because they were building something better. They could be their true selves without the baggage of physical appearance, social anxiety, or geography. Consider the implications for mental health. On one hand, there is a serious risk of escapism. If you can live a perfect life in a virtual world, why bother with the messy, painful, unpredictable real one? Studies on heavy VR users have shown signs of what researchers call dissociation, a sense of detachment from the physical body and the real world. Some users report feeling like their real hands are not their own after spending hours in a virtual body. That is a real psychological cost. But on the other hand, the potential benefits are enormous. Virtual reality is already being used to treat PTSD. Veterans with combat trauma can relive triggering events in a controlled environment, with a therapist guiding them through the process. The results have been remarkable. Phobia treatment is another area. People terrified of heights can stand on a virtual skyscraper. People afraid of public speaking can address a virtual crowd. The exposure therapy works because the brain believes it is real, but the stakes are zero. You can fail, you can fall, and it costs nothing but a few minutes of discomfort. Social isolation is a growing crisis. Loneliness has been linked to heart disease, depression, and early death. And here is where virtual worlds could be a lifeline. For someone who is housebound due to illness or disability, a virtual world offers connection. For someone who lives in a remote area with no community, a virtual world offers belonging. The data from platforms like VRChat shows that people are forming genuine friendships and support networks in these spaces. They are not just playing games, they are living. But there is a darker side to this. The same technology that can heal can also harm. If you can simulate any experience, you can simulate trauma. You can simulate addiction. You can simulate experiences that warp your sense of normalcy. And when the virtual world is always available, always perfect, always under your control, the real world starts to feel like a downgrade, a chore, a place you visit only when you have to. So here is the paradox we are walking into. Virtual worlds can be a tool for healing, connection, and self-discovery. They can also be a trap, a beautifully rendered cage that you choose to enter and then choose to stay in day after day until the real world becomes a distant memory. The technology does not decide which path we take. We do. And that is the part that keeps me up at night. If this vision of the future excites you or makes you deeply uncomfortable, that tension is exactly what we explore on this channel every week. Consider this. Back in 2015, when the first CRISPR-edited human embryos were announced in China, the global scientific community erupted. Over 40 countries immediately called for a moratorium. Yet just 7 years later, in 2022, the first patient received an in vivo CRISPR treatment inside their own body, targeting a genetic blindness condition. The leap from ethical panic to clinical reality took less than a decade. That is the pace we are dealing with. The counterintuitive truth is that most people think these technologies will arrive slowly, giving us time to adapt. But history shows the opposite. The gap between impossible and commonplace is shrinking with every breakthrough. And here is why this matters for you right now. The choices being made in labs this year about AI alignment, about gene editing thresholds, about brain-computer interface safety standards, will shape the tools your children take for granted. We are not passive observers. We are the generation that sets the guardrails. Hit subscribe to Future Frontiers because these questions are only going to get more urgent from here. We are just scratching the surface of what is coming. Let us zoom out across the globe, from Silicon Valley to rural China. Entire communities are building their livelihoods in digital worlds. Consider the numbers. Fortnite generates over $5 billion a year from in-game purchases alone. That is an economy. Players spend real money on virtual skins and emotes. They are not buying items. They are buying status. In a world where your avatar is your body, a rare cosmetic is the equivalent of a luxury watch. But the real revolution is in play-to-earn models. Axie Infinity is the perfect example. This is a blockchain game where players breed, battle, and trade digital creatures called Axies. In the Philippines, during the pandemic, thousands of people quit their jobs to play Axie Infinity full-time. They earned more than the minimum wage, sometimes 3 or 4 times more, just by playing a video game. Imagine that. Entire families built their income around a virtual ecosystem. They bought Axies, formed teams, and earned tokens convertible to cash. For a while, it worked. People bought houses. They paid for medical bills. And then, it crashed. The token value plummeted. The player base shrank. Thousands of people who had built their lives around a virtual economy were left with nothing. That is the volatility of a world where your livelihood depends on a server somewhere. But every major economic shift follows the same arc. First a bubble, then a crash, then something more stable emerges. The dot-com bubble burst in 2000, wiping out countless startups. It also cleared the ground for Amazon and Google. The same is happening with virtual worlds. The crashes are painful, but they are lessons. Now the uncomfortable part. As virtual economies grow, they mirror the worst aspects of the physical world. Researchers call it digital feudalism. A handful of platform owners control the virtual land, the resources, and the rules. You do not own your avatar. You license it. The platform can ban you, delete your inventory, or change the terms of service at any moment. You are a tenant in a world you do not control. Think about it this way. In the real world, if you buy a house, you own it. The deed is recorded. The government enforces your property rights. In a virtual world, you buy a digital asset, and the platform holds the keys. If the company goes bankrupt, your assets vanish. You are not a citizen, you are a user, and the platform is the sovereign. This is not hypothetical. In 2022, the creator of VRChat introduced a monetization system that effectively revoked the ability for independent creators to sell items without paying a platform cut. The community erupted. Creators who had spent years building assets saw their business models upended. The platform had the power. The creators had nothing but goodwill. Look at the map of virtual economies. The biggest hubs are not where you expect. Silicon Valley is the engine, but the workers are everywhere. In the Philippines, play-to-earn players. In Venezuela, gamers earning crypto to survive hyperinflation. In Kenya, digital artists selling NFTs to buyers in New York. The virtual economy is global by design. It only cares about connectivity and skill. But the same connectivity enables exploitation. In many play-to-earn economies, the players are not the owners. They are the labor. They grind for hours to earn tokens the platform controls. They are digital factory workers. And the platform owners, sitting in San Francisco or Shanghai, collect the rent. That is digital feudalism in action. Imagine a future where full dive VR is the dominant platform for work. You put on your headset and enter a virtual office. You do your job. You earn your wage. But the office is owned by a corporation. The land your virtual desk sits on is rented. And the currency you are paid in is issued by the platform. Who holds the power? The platform. Always. Now consider the alternative. What if virtual worlds were built on open protocols, like the early internet? What if you could own your identity, your assets, and your data, and move them freely between worlds? That is the promise of the metaverse as originally conceived. A decentralized network of interoperable spaces. But that vision is under threat. The big players want control. They want the rent. They want the data. Here's the hard question. If we choose to live inside virtual worlds, who will own the reality we inhabit? Will it be a public square, governed by democratic principles, or a private mall, where every interaction is monetized, and every move is tracked? The answer is not predetermined. It depends on the choices we make now. The infrastructure is being built as we speak. The laws are being written. The balance of power is up for grabs. The virtual economy is not a distant future. It is already here. Millions of people already earn their income from digital spaces. The question is not whether we will have virtual economies. It is whether those economies will be fair. Will they lift people up, or lock them into a new kind of serfdom? That is the choice we are facing. And it will define the next century. So here is where all of this converges into a single question. What does reality even mean if you can choose it? If you wake up in a world that feels real, smells real, hurts real, and you know it is a simulation, does that make it less real? Plato's allegory of the cave is the original virtual reality thought experiment. Prisoners chained in a cave, watching shadows on a wall, believing those shadows are the whole of reality. When one prisoner escapes and sees the actual world, he cannot convince the others. They think he is insane. Now the modern version. Nick Bostrom's simulation argument. In 2003, he published a paper that still rattles around the internet. His argument goes like this. If a civilization reaches a point where it can create realistic simulations of conscious beings, and if it chooses to run many such simulations, then the number of simulated minds would vastly outnumber the non-simulated ones. Which means it is statistically more likely that we are already living in a simulation. The math is unsettlingly clean. The brain in a vat thought experiment from Hilary Putnam in the 1980s makes the same point. Your brain removed, placed in a vat, connected to a supercomputer, feeding you the exact sensory data of a normal life.
You would have no way of knowing. But here is the twist most people miss. Even if we are in a simulation, it doesn't change anything.
The pain is still real. The love is still real. Because the experience is happening in your consciousness. And consciousness is the only thing we can be sure of. Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am." He did not say the external world is exactly as it appears. Eastern philosophy offers a different lens here. The concept of Maya in Hinduism and Buddhism, the illusory nature of the world. Not that the world does not exist, but that our perception of it is a veil. The simulation argument is basically a high-tech version of the same insight. The world is not what it seems. Now contrast that with Western transhumanist optimism. People like Ray Kurzweil and Elon Musk see virtual worlds as an escape, a way to transcend biology, aging, disease, death. Upload your consciousness into a digital substrate and live forever in a world of your own design. The Buddhist says the world is an illusion, and the goal is to see through it. The transhumanist says the world is an illusion, and the goal is to design a better one. Which one is right? Maybe both, maybe neither. And this is where The Matrix becomes more than just a movie. Neo is offered a choice. The red pill reveals the truth. The blue pill keeps him in the comfortable illusion. Most people interpret that as a clear moral. Choose truth. But what if the red pill does not lead to truth? What if it leads to a better designed truth? The Wachowskis hinted at that in the sequels. The architect reveals The Matrix has been rebooted multiple times. The real world of Zion might be just another simulation to contain the rebels. The choice is not between truth and illusion. It is between one illusion and another. So here's the motivational pivot. The choice to live in virtual worlds is not about escaping reality. It is about expanding what reality can be. The physical world is one layer. The digital world is another. They are complementary. The question is whether we will do it consciously, deliberately, and with wisdom. Imagine a future where you can live 100 lives. One life as a medieval blacksmith, another as a deep space explorer, another as a painter in a world where light bends in impossible ways. Each life is real because it is experienced. That is not escapism. That is expansion. The red pill is not about choosing between the real and the virtual. It is about choosing to see the architecture, to understand that reality is a construct, and that you have a hand in building it. The truth is not a bleak desert. The truth is that reality is malleable, and that is terrifying and liberating in equal measure.
So what does this mean for you, right now? It means the boundaries you take for granted,
the walls of your room, the gravity holding you to the floor, the face you see in the mirror, are not fixed. They are agreements, they are conventions, and they can be rewritten. The future of reality is not a destination. It is a question, and you get to answer it. And that brings us here, to the edge of everything we have talked about.
Subscribe to Future Frontiers for more on the future of reality, because these questions are not going away. They are only going to become more personal. The future is not a destination we arrive at.
It is a world we build. And the question is not whether we will live in virtual worlds, it is whether we will build them wisely, with eyes open, with intention, with the courage to choose the red pill, not just once, but every single day. The choice is yours. It always has been.